our first guest, our only guest, Ian Tannenbaum. It's now time for Center Stage, and today we've got Ian Tannenbaum joining us. Ian is an ADHD coach who helps entrepreneurs get out of their heads, boop, 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 and follow through and get shit done. He's also had to stay incredibly accountable to his personal life after recovering from a serious spinal fusion surgery. I'm interested to talk about that today. Yeah, no kidding, Johnny. Ian, welcome to Mornings in the Lab with Keith and Friends. Excited to have you here today and to learn a little bit about you. Good morning, my friend.
What's up, Ian?
What's up, brother? Pleasure to meet you.
What's up, Ian? Oh, I think we got Ian muted there, or he's got his headphones on the old quiet there. Jimmy will bring Ian up here in the morning here. Good morning, Shelly. Good to see you here this morning in the lab. Good to have you here getting after it first thing this morning. There he is.
There we go. There we go.
Loud and clear. How are you, Ian?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear.
We got you, brother.
How are you, pal?
I'm doing great. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag. It's maybe on my side, but are we good now?
Absolutely.
Let's rock, brother.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So, Ian, where are you joining us from today, brother?
I'm based in Los Angeles in Sherman Oaks.
Oh, just up the road from John Anderson.
Yeah.
I lived in that area.
John, where are you?
I'm actually over towards Palm Desert, but I'm really tucked away. We're literally the community is literally, it's between 50 and 60 homes at a private lake. And it's actually an area called Newberry Springs, but nobody has a clue where it is. And that's exactly why we're there.
I'm jealous. Yeah, we're in the city. It has its perks, but sometimes I wish I was way out in the country like you.
So, Ian, I appreciate you getting out of bed early this morning to hang out with us this morning. We're talking a little bit about accountability. We're talking about your journey as a coach, but also your journey back from a debilitating spinal injury. Ian, let's start there, man. What happened? How did that injury happen? And how did you pull yourself together to get through that incredible spinal injury that you had, Ian? Oh,
yeah, there's a little bit of a lag on my side, but you guys hearing me clear?
we sure are. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, great. So I did competitive gymnastics growing up along with other sports, but that's the one that was pretty abusive to my back. So I had ADHD growing up. I was a hyper kid starting at 5, 6 years old. I was put in gymnastics nobody knew what to do with me. I would run around and jump and flip and all that stuff. And then by the time I was about 17, 18, I had put so much abuse on my spine from all the excessive exercise that I had a back injury at a competition. And then it just always stayed out of whack. So when I was about 30, I was changing a flat tire. I threw my back out. I had my first surgery. And then I did a lot of physical therapy and a lot of trying to heal it. And it went okay, but about 38, I was going through a divorce and suddenly the back went out again and I had a second surgery. And then that one I was recovering for about 2 months and then the back went out again. That was my third surgery. Then now the third surgery ended up getting infected. Then I needed a fourth surgery. And now at this point, I'm going through a divorce. I'm 38 years old. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And found out that I needed a fifth surgery. So at this point, you can't make this shit up. And I'm like, I had to give up to the universe and to God. I was like, just get me fixed. So luckily, it was so bad that I needed a 2-level fusion, which is where they put the rods in, make me a bionic man. So that was like a turning point where I was like, all right, I gotta just take the theme of today, the accountability. I got to understand this. I got to do the therapy. I got to get my exercise in order. And since then, it's been about 5 years or 4 years maybe. And I've been better than I've been my whole life. So now I know how to manage my back, my exercise, my stretching, my posture, all the things that go into it. And it's actually that part of my life with all those surgeries and everything was actually a big turning point, like a dark night of the soul, where I had all that time between surgeries and everything to reflect and look at my whole life, not just my back. And that led me on a journey of understanding my ADHD, understanding my habits, understanding the way I interact with the world, and just really starting ownership for everything. So it was really like a big catalyst and a blessing in disguise now looking back.
Yeah. Some people say it's easier to be accountable in business. You spend your time coaching folks on the ADHD side and probably life and business, but when it comes to health, it's more personal and often harder to stay on track. You just shared with us for the last few minutes about your struggles with your back, and it was it kept flaring up, or you had these instances keep coming up. What forced you to look in your own mirror, Ian, to have some accountability about your own personal situation? Because it wasn't the first time, wasn't the second time. Finally, the light went on to say, okay, I got to deal with this. Why, Ian? Why did you finally decide you needed to deal with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I was fortunate, I think, enough to have a 1-year-old child at the time.
Mm.
And going through a divorce with a 1-year-old, I was inherently struggling for time. Even the most amount of time with my son as possible was still half of the time. And at that age, that's a very difficult thing to work through. And that was a double-edged sword again, right? It was a blessing and a curse, but it was an opportunity because I had half of my time at least to work on myself. But to your point, the question, I was lucky and fortunate to have this motivation, this drive that it wasn't just for me. So I guess in a way, a lot of it comes from being in a way selfless, because I wasn't necessarily just doing it for myself, which a lot of people struggle when it's just for themselves. I was doing it for a 1.5-year-old son that I wanted to be able to support, to lift. I couldn't lift him because of all these surgeries. I couldn't play with him. I had a lot of that just drive to fix all this. And now it's completely transformed my life. I feel very grateful that I had that opportunity. And now I'm forever changed. But in the moment, it feels like hell on earth, and it feels like nothing makes sense. And that's why I do the work I do now, because I help a lot of people, maybe not as dramatic of a situation, still that feeling of despair and overwhelm, like they don't know where to go next, and they can't imagine it ever changing. So I can come in and help them say, no, it can get better, but we have a lot of work to do. Let's look at what that's going to be.
Johnny, what strikes you when you hear Ian's story? Because I know it strikes me as a parent. Johnny, what strikes you when you hear Ian's story?
First thing I love is that he took a whole shitload of lemons and made some pretty sweet lemonade. That's the first thing. Yeah. Love that. And I really relate when my first daughter was born and I became a father. It was like, holy shit, it's time to do some house cleaning, man, because there was a lot of people in my life. There was a lot of shit in my life that I needed to get out, because all of a sudden now, just like you said, it wasn't just me anymore. I knew I was fine waiting around in that bullshit, but my little one was not. And I had to push a lot of friends away. I had to push away a lot of bad behavior patterns. So I just so relate to what he's saying. And I love the fact that people need to understand, and I think we talk about a lot on the show, when you're a better you, which is basically what we're talking about. You're a better father. You're a better friend. You're a better husband, wife, whatever it is. So I just love the fact that, he made some pretty sweet lemonade out of a whole shitload of lemons. Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five surgeries. Holy shit. And he even said, I'm the bionic man. So he took that and even tagged it with something positive. So you're talking my language, brother.
Yeah. Marty, I saw you nodding there as Johnny was talking, and I saw you nodding as Ian was talking. What were you taking out of Ian's story, Marty?
Pretty much, Ian, he looked in the mirror and he said, I got to go through this. He pretty much, he played with the cards he was dealt, and sometimes life does that. But what struck me was how he said he's a better man. He's better now than he ever was in his life.
Yes.
And I don't know why God works like that, but he's going to put us through stuff, and it's just going to make us better, but we don't realize it at the time. And I just wanted to ask you, Ian, so the injuries, do you think, like now that you're older and you look back from gymnastics, do you think some of the injuries came from maybe bad technique or bad coaching, or you think you just had bad joints?
Yeah, so I later found out there's a small component that they call, I think, congenital. That means from birth. So I had some weaker discs and spine, just slightly. But the competitive gymnastics, I think people don't really appreciate it. Meaning, you think about football or hockey and you think, oh man, those are dangerous. Oh yeah, head injuries. Oh yeah, kids got to be careful. But gymnastics is incredibly abusive on the spine at a young age when it's in a developmental stage. 10 years old and hitting the ground, falling off of bars, smacking my face on the horse. And it put a lot of pressure on my discs. So I don't think it has anything with anything outside of myself. I do think I was a bit tall, so there's a bit more of a flex, but I think it's just that start to acknowledge how some of the sports our kids play impact their joints and their puberty or their development or their muscles, or like in football or hockey nowadays, their brain and helmets. Some of these things have lasting impact, and we don't think of it as much. That was only one part of it. I said I had, I believe, weaker discs and felt like I was going to be one of those people who had back problems my whole life and is always complaining about my back no matter what. And I started to just accept that in my 30s. I'm like, oh, I'm one of those people. I got to be careful. I got to be careful. And then once I went through all this hell and now I got the metal discs and I've got the bars and everything, I could lift anything. I can run, I can play tennis. I don't have to worry about my back anymore. So like I said, it was a blessing in disguise. And if it didn't get that bad, I wouldn't have been able to get the $500,000 insurance to pay for this complicated surgery. A lot of people get left in limbo where they've had back problems, but it's not as bad as mine was. So they don't get the full fusion. And then they got disc problems forever. And then they're always being careful and sensitive and paranoid because they don't want to hurt their back again. They might hurt their back. They might hurt their back. And so, like I said, it was a blessing in disguise. One I remember quite vividly in those moments, I was pretty much broke, moved out of my house, living in my friend's guest house while I was having these surgeries because I wasn't working. And I was very fortunate to have a friend with a little guest house in LA, but I'd go for a walk around the neighborhood and it's in the middle of LA. So I go down the street by the Jack in the Box and there's these little homeless encampments. I'm waking up, not seeing my son, healing from the last surgery, not working, broke, living in my friend's guest house in the backyard in a little 400 square foot fucking life. But then I go for a walk exercise and I'm looking at these homeless encampments on the corner. So that was a really powerful paradox or dichotomy where I'm thinking, poor me, I gotta live in a guest house for free in LA. And meanwhile, you got these homeless people I'm walking by and I'm giving them the $1 I have in my pocket because I figure I'll find another dollar. They might not. So that was a really powerful part of my life, I feel like.
Hey, you're hanging out with Keith, John, C. Marty Fit, and our friend, our guest, Ian Tannenbaum here this morning. Ian's going to stick around for the deep dive here coming up in a couple moments, and we're going to talk about breaking down actionable strategies to hold yourself accountable in business and in life. And hey, if we got some time, we're going to ask Ian about that sign behind him. I love hip hop. Yes, you don't want to miss that. But before we do that, let's get into this part of the show. Yep, Marty's up.